Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. Today's video, as you've probably guessed from the title and thumbnail, is about getting into the Wonnangatta Valley, that iconic Victorian high country destination. There's a lot of ways to get into Wonnangatta, and this one's entitled The Easy Way to Wonnangatta. Now, to me, the easy way into Wonnangatta is the northwestern entrance. There's probably an argument to be made that Zika Spur at the moment, certainly the last few times I've driven it, is a pretty easy entrance, and that actually comes off what is a public road. That's probably going to change over time. So this entrance is what I consider the easy entrance, and it's the one I'm driving today, so I thought I'd share it with you. So Wonnangatta Valley is marked by this track here, the Wonnangatta track, and the entrance we're coming in is on the north side. So where you access this is you can come in from the north, from Wonnangatta, Myrtleford, what have you, come down past Lake Buffalo, and our video today starts near the corner of Rose River Road and the Abbeyard Road. The yellow going to white denotes where it changes from a sealed road to a gravel road. So we head south here, past the various campgrounds along the Abbeyard Road, before heading on to the Wonnangatta track, which takes us past a few tracks you've seen videos on recently. There's a couple of key points here. Just here near the start of Van Dam's track, there's a really sharp, almost 180 degree turn that you really don't want to miss, and then you begin working your way down the valley. And when you get down here, there's a right hand turn. Instead of taking Riley's track, which kind of is straight ahead the way it's shown there on the map, there's a right-hand turn to head down into the Wonnangatta Valley. So, yeah, look, without further ado, let's get into the video. I was actually heading on this trip to meet Dan and a mate of his, Paul. So Dan from Out There with Dan. This is the first time I caught up with him in person, and this video is made on the way to Wonnangatta. So let's get into it, guys. Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and as you just heard, we're heading to Wonnangatta. So I've just pulled over there on the corner of Rose River Road and Abbeyards Road and aired down. Still pretty early in the morning. I got a pretty early start today. And again, as you heard in the intro, heading to Wonnangatta today to meet up with Dan from Out There with Dan and his mate Paul. Dan's rocking his trusty grey dingo, I think it's a 120 Prado. Don't know my Prados, probably got that wrong. Could even be a 90 series Prado. Anyway, I'm sure somebody who knows Prados will tell me when they see it. And his mate Paul is rocking an FJ Cruiser. Now, as you heard on the intro, we're heading south on the Abbeyard Road, which follows along the river quite nicely. Really is quite a scenic drive, and the lighting this early in the morning was just fantastic. You can see it's still dull enough that the headlights are making a bit of an impression there as the sun's coming up, getting a little bit lighter the further along we go. Abbeyards Road is a two-wheel drive road. Does get corrugated from time to time. At the time of filming this, which was I think in late March, it was a pretty good nick. It's been relatively recently graded and hasn't corrugated up too much just yet, but it has been prone to getting fairly corrugated. It's a decently wide road, so as long as you drive sensibly, stay on the left-hand side of the road, you really shouldn't have too much in the way of issues. Just crossing the Brandy Creek crossing, as you saw there. So now I believe it's the Buffalo River that we're paralleling here. And as I said earlier, it really is a nice drive. You get some great views of the river through most of the sections here. And down along here, sort of similar to the Buckland Valley, which is the next valley over, there's a myriad of campsites, so yeah, popular camping spot. Look at that sky as the sun's coming up and lighting up the sky just a little bit more. And before you get into the national park, you do traverse through a lot of this leased open farmland. So there is likely to be cattle grazing on or around the road, so keep an eye out for them. and obviously areas like this where it's not fenced, stay on the road, because the land either side is not public land, it's privately owned and leased. So this is not an area where you can just drive off the side of the road and find a camp spot. You do need to stay on the road in these areas as you make your way through to the Alpine National Park area, and keep an eye out for cows on the road, as I said. And it is a really nice drive through here. As you can see, every time you sort of get to the end of one section of the valley, you can sort of crest the hill and come around, and the next section opens up in front of you, all the time getting closer and closer to those mountains in the high country. Now the closer we get, the more the road sort of starts to turn into a track, a little narrower, a little rougher, but all the way through very, very drivable. So we're certainly making a good clip to get along here at this time. And we've just entered the Alpine National Park, and we're on the West Buffalo track. A lot of people probably just still call it the Wonnangatta track. Various maps have various names for it. Some will call this whole section the Wonnangatta track. The last section is the Wonnangatta track, and this is the East Buffalo track. But either way, it's the one that starts straight at the end of Abbeyard Road. Little stream crossing there. I've never seen that terribly deep at any particular time. And just on the right hand side there, that is the southern end of the Razor track, which you will have seen on the previous video, I think, that was on the channel, either the most recent or the one before that, where we actually did the Razor track. Obviously that wasn't for today, but we have found the opportunity to do that. Now the track through to Wonnangatta is fairly undulating. Ultimately you work your way up over the ridge and then down into the valley, but between here and there, there's a lot of ups and downs. Generally the track is in pretty good condition, like what you're seeing here. Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and early on a Saturday morning we are on our way to Wonnangatta. Catching up with Dan today from Out There with Dan. I'll put a link to his channel in the description for this video. He does a little bit of touring stuff, some cool cooking videos and product reviews, that sort of thing. So yeah, looking forward to that. Been talking to Dan for a while. First time we're actually meeting in person, so yeah, it's just after 8 AM. We got an early start this morning, and we're going to hit some of my favourite tracks today. We're doing Wonnangatta, and then we're doing Humphrey River track, looping back around on Riley's track, and then up Zika Spur, and we're going to do Butcher Country, which I've not done before. So look, by the time this comes out, you've probably already seen the Caledonia River track video. At least I hope you have. That was very scenic. That was a really nice trip. That one had a lot of fun. Crikey, that was a bit more than I was expecting. So yeah, looking forward to Butcher Country today. So back in the padge again. By the time you're watching this, I suspect you are aware that a new vehicle is on the horizon, and by now you've possibly even seen the intro video for the new vehicle. So I don't think I'm letting anything out of the bag by saying it's a 2012 GXL 76 series. I have been driving that as a bit of my daily drive. It's a bit interesting, isn't it? I have been driving that as my daily driver, and it's a manual, so certainly a bit of a culture shift. Dropping back into the padge for this trip. This is probably the second last trip in the padge. It's beginning of April, end of March. There's another steep climb coming up. We might just drop into low range for that one. So yeah, it's end of March, beginning of April, and I got one more trip planned in the Padge, which is going to be at the end of April, and then after that, which could be, you know, before this video even goes to air, to be honest, the Padge will be going up for sale. This is interesting. It's been an awesome sort of 4.5 years with the Padge, but it's a little bit of a time for a change. Never owned a solid axle vehicle, so you're certainly going to find out whether that's something I'm going to enjoy or not. It's a bit rough, bit slippery, bit interesting. So it's stuff like this where traction control on the Pajero just makes this super easy. It's sort of point and shoot stuff. The 76 I'm going to be driving fairly stock to start with, so certainly no traction control. It doesn't have that. Later model ones do, I think, but no lockers either. And you know, I just want to see what that's like before changing it too much. Anyway guys, it's going to be an awesome day, so let's get into it. So as you can see there are some reasonably steep sections coming into Wonnangatta, but you know, they're a little bit rough, a little bit bumpy. Early in the morning, first up, when there's been a heavy dew the night before, they're a little bit wet, so a little bit moist. Traction's not fantastic. Nothing traction control can't sort of solve for you. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's difficult at all. There's no big rock steps, there's no massive ruts or anything. There's no sort of, oh, you've got to choose the right line or you're going to have a problem. Some reasonably steep hills, generally a good surface, generally good traction. And certainly if you're driving a reasonably late model vehicle with traction control, you're unlikely to have issues. I did drop it into low range for a couple of the hills. May or may not have really been necessary. Obviously should reduce the load on the drivetrain if you do that. And given my history with drivetrain components in the Pajero, anything that reduces the load on the drivetrain seems like a good idea. So yeah, as you can see here, another one of those hills. So this lower section here is quite smooth. Looks a little rougher up in that second section. Still nothing that you look at and say, oh, that's going to be difficult to sort of choose a path. You can choose any line you want up these hills. And that's why I decided to call this the easy way to Wonnangatta. A lot of people seem to like the easy way to Craig's Hut video. So really intending to show you guys here that there is an easy way into Wonnangatta and anyone should be able to drive it. Now this corner here is critical. It's a 180 degree almost right hand turn, so there's a lot of tracks that go other places. You need to make this turn if you're heading into Wonnangatta and not miss it and drive past it, which is easy to do even when you know where you're going and you're following the map. You did get a glimpse there of the view down into the valley, which is a smacking view, cracking view. And really from this point on, that's when we start the descent proper down into the valley. It's quite a long descent, no real super steep sections. They vary, but generally it's a long steady descent with occasional up sections in between as you work your way down the side of the range. Track does tend to follow the line of the hills as well, so it keeps it interesting when you're driving it, which early in the morning is a really good thing. Keeps you focused and paying attention. I think I was up at about 5 AM, maybe 4:30 this morning to start this trip, because Dan and Paul are already out here. They've been out here for a couple of days and they're doing another day after this. I just didn't have a lot of time at this particular time. My mum was in hospital at the time and I was going down to visit her, so I could only really spare the one day, and the guys sort of organised their trip a little bit so that I could meet up with them, which was awesome. yeah, Wonnangatta is probably one of the remotest parts of the high country. Certainly one of the remotest accessible parts of the high country. And I say accessible because there's a number of ways of getting there. There's a number of tracks. Key point that I probably should have mentioned before now is that access to Wonnangatta is seasonal. So when you're watching this video, access won't reopen until around about the end of October. And as you can see, they're taking the A-line. Look, I've been driving on this road for so long, I had to feel like I was driving something off-road. I saw this little crossing through the stream going around the side, and I thought, right, I'm not going to drive across the bridge when I can drive around it and take the water crossing. Wash the tyres, who knows. Hadn't been a lot of rain or anything. There's just a few puddles sort of sitting on the track here and there. It wasn't super wet, but because of that, I was very intrigued to see what it was like when we actually got into Wonnangatta proper. Every time I've been there, there's been mud. Now this is one of the last turns, so as you can see on the screen there, that left-hand line that was kind of straight ahead was Riley's track, and the right-hand line, which is kind of a turn, takes you into Wonnangatta. So we're only about 3-4 k's out of the Wonnangatta Valley at this point. This last section of 3 or 4 k's is probably where the track's in the poorest condition, and I wouldn't say it's bad condition. It's just a little bit lumpier than it has been, but still very, very drivable. Not something that you've got to go down to second gear low range and crawl your way through by any stretch of the imagination. And one of the things I love to think about whenever I'm heading into Wonnangatta is think about what it was like back in the day for the people that were living there. They were 4 days travel from help, and that was 4 days probably on horseback. It's considered a remote area these days where we can get there in a few hours in a four-wheel drive. Back then it was 4 days. So if you were living out here, running cattle out here, you were 4 days from the nearest help. Which says something about the tenaciousness and determinedness of the people that lived out here back then, and why there is a historic cemetery at Wonnangatta, which I think I've shown in a previous video, and it kind of explains why a lot of the people died at a relatively young age, because if something happened, you're a long way from getting help and reliant only on what you had with you and the people that were around you. As you can see here, we are getting close to the actual Wonnangatta Valley. The last section is probably the steepest descent section. Still not a super steep descent, but steeper than it has been. But before, not too long, we've finished that descent and we're coming in to the base of the valley, and then it's just a matter of getting to the Wonnangatta River. And generally, I think most people do, I certainly do, consider you've arrived at Wonnangatta when you cross the river, when you're coming in from the north like this. It's probably an argument to say that here where we are at the base of the valley kind of thing, you're in the Wonnangatta Valley, but typically most people would agree, I think, that you've actually arrived when you've crossed the river, which once you get down here is really not too far away at all. And this is the Wonnangatta River, so the northwestern entrance to Wonnangatta. As you can see, the river's not up particularly deep at this time. It's a pretty easy crossing, nice clear water. You've got 2 exits, one straight ahead that's a little bit lumpy, and a much easier one on the right hand side. Of course, after 3 hours of two-wheel drive, pretty much, you know which one I'm taking. A little bit of steam there coming off the brake rotors. And yeah, we've climbed straight up out of there. And there's some guys camping here. Hopefully it didn't disturb them. It's probably 8:30, 9 o'clock by now, probably close to 9 o'clock. I think I'd organised to meet down in Paul around 9:30. And here we are in Wonnangatta proper. So once you're here, just can't wait to get to that open area that we all think about with Wonnangatta, the big open valley and the grass. And coming up on that now, the lights well up in the sky. So look guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like this video if you liked it. Leave any comments, questions down below. Next video, we'll be catching up with Dan and Paul at the Wonnangatta homestead and heading off from there for a great day of wheeling with a couple of good blokes. So see you in the next video, guys. As always, thanks for watching.